Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden is set to host his South African counterpart, President Cyril Ramaphosa, at the White House later this month. This follows U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to South Africa last month. The meeting is aimed at bringing the two nations closer amid a raging war between Russia and Ukraine. Is the U.S. worried about South Africa's silence in condemning Vladimir Putin for the war in Ukraine? Well, let's bring in the director of the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg, who is also the Associate Professor of International Relations and Political Science, Professor David Monyae. A very good morning to you, Professor, and thank you so much for your time. Are we seeing a case here of the enemy of my enemy is my friend?
It's always the case with big powers. I mean, they expect that whoever is their enemy, everyone else should follow suit. It's a power relation. However, the world is changing. A number of countries are taking independent position on quite a number of conflicts. And in this one in particular, I think South Africa has taken a very clear position that the best way to bring peace and security in the world is to take a neutral position, ensure that the warring parties do indeed reach an agreement.
Minister of International Relations and Cooperative Governance, of course, Menaledi Pandor, made it very clear. Don't just be careful what you say to me. Don't try and tell me how I must do my job. Don't try and tell me which side of the fence I must be sitting on. Can we expect that kind of resolution from our president? Can he go over to the White House and tell President Biden that, look, I want us to have a great relationship, but I'm not going to now mess up the relationship I also have with Russia just because you want to have an upper hand on Vladimir Putin? I mean, can we hear from the president any kind of direction or any kind of force from him and assertion?
It really depends with the style of each individual. He might not speak in the manner in which Minister Pandor expressed his view. And in this business, at the level of head of state, the best way is to make a clear statement before he embarks on this trip, where he makes his position quite clear. He has a number of platforms to do so. I think the very best one to make a clear statement where he stands, where the country stands, I think is to use the ANC platform, where he can write and make it clear. But when he gets in White House, it's a diplomacy, and issues are handled in a very cordial and friendly way without really offending the host.
The U.S. revamped its Africa, of course, Russia, China influence. What had changed from the previous administrations where that is concerned?
Quite a number of the situation. I mean, the United States in itself, I mean, has internal issues around from Trump and now President Biden. But there's one thing that is consistent with U.S. foreign policy. It's hegemonic position on key issues. In this particular, I think the war in Ukraine, there are quite a number of issues that are going wrong from Russia's side and the Ukrainian side. I think what is at the heart of the crisis for most African countries is the expansion of NATO, that NATO continues to expand, threatening, and indeed Russia has a genuine concern to its security, something that the United States does with quite a number of countries. Anyone who gets in Latin America, United States won't allow. It is the only hegemonic power in Latin America. And therefore, there are these double standards. And I think from a South African perspective, there is a need of reforming United Nations. There is a need to use peaceful ways of resolving crises, including the Ukraine. But the world faces more conflicts, more than Ukraine. We have crises in the Great Lake region, in Ethiopia as we speak, and we still have crises in Libya. And some of these challenges are caused by Western powers in Yemen, Iraq, where they caused havoc and left those countries such as Afghanistan in chaos. And therefore, there is a need of consistent, if we talk about human rights and all issues that are coming from White House.
Just before we let you go, Professor, is this an opportunity for Africa to get itself felt by the superpowers of the world, for Africa to change the international order? Can the President Ramaphosa go in there and actually help Africa stake its claim?
Not really. He's going as a head of state of South Africa, and South Africa has good relationship with the United States. I think what is needed and what is core is to attract investment from United States, and also to discuss beyond Ukraine to deal with other issues such as climate change. United States is talking about building infrastructure on the African continent, and to coordinate and ensure that South Africa gets more investments to deal with its own domestic crisis of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. So I think those are some of the key issues that President Ramaphosa will be dealing and making exchanges with his counterpart.
All right. That visit, of course, of President Cyril Ramaphosa to the White House is happening later on this month. Professor, thank you so much for joining us here on the South African Morning.